Burning questions.
Insightful answers.
Listener's choice.
With Clement Manyathela.
All right, time for our Listener's Choice feature now. And today, if you are listening to Listener's Choice for the first time, Listener's Choice is an opportunity we give you as the listeners of the show to co-curate the content of the show with us. I mean, we plan the show from Monday to Friday for all the 3 hours each day. And this is an opportunity for you to tell us what you want us to talk about, because this is your show. And it could be anything. All you have to do is to send me an email on cm@702.co.za. And then we'll have that conversation and bring in the relevant guests to talk to us about that subject matter. Today, we're talking about life in the West Bank, because one of our listeners asked that we discuss what life is like in the West Bank in Palestine. And because for many Palestinians in the West Bank, their experience means navigating checkpoints, restrictions, there's economic hardship, but they're also facing the risks of displacement and violence. There's a lot of focus. We've spoken a lot about Gaza, but there's a lot happening in the West Bank as well. It may not be at the same extent or in the same way, but the people living there are facing their own challenges. So what we've done is invite Osama Nazzal, who is a resident there in the West Bank. In fact, he also works as a journalist in the West Bank, who will share that experience with us. And if you've got your questions, you can call us on 011-883-0702 or send a WhatsApp on 072-702-1702. Osama, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning. You're welcome.
Let's start maybe with just understanding the government in the West Bank. How is it set up? Is it an independent government? Is it solely on its own? Does Israel play any part, even in, like, let's say, air security? Can you just help us understand the relationship between Israel and the West Bank as things currently stand?
Yeah. First, good morning to your viewers and listeners, our friends, brothers, and sisters of South Africa. It is very important, really, not to differentiate between the occupied West Bank and Gaza Strip, as they constitute one entity of land and one people. It is all the occupied Palestinian territories, Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. So the pain and the catastrophic conditions that our people in Gaza are going through are the same conditions that hurt and ache the people of the West Bank. But because Israel cut off the Palestinian territories, the West Bank is separated from Gaza and Jerusalem. How it is separated? It is separated through the Israeli checkpoints and the Israeli walls. So if I'm a Palestinian, if I want to visit Gaza, even before the Israeli genocide war started, it was impossible for me without having a permission from the Israeli occupation authorities in order to go through the walls and the checkpoints erected by Israel to separate the West Bank from Gaza. The same applies to Jerusalem. I'm now a few kilometers away from Jerusalem, but I can't get there because of the Israeli walls and the Israeli checkpoints. So we are talking about all of the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967 are under full Israeli control. Now, yes, there is in the West Bank the Palestinian Authority and there is the Palestinian government. But what authorities and what powers this Palestinian government has, I can say none, as the Israeli occupation are occupying all of the West Bank, carrying out incursions every night and during the daylight, attacking Palestinians, searching their homes, making their life impossible. Just an example to make things clear. If I want to move from Jenin to Ramallah, where I work, for example, I can't get to Ramallah without passing through a set of Israeli checkpoints. At these checkpoints, every Palestinian is stopped and searched and checked, and sometimes you spend 5 hours and 6 hours at the checkpoint without letting you through. So we are talking about a land under full Israeli occupation control, and the Palestinian Authority is very much weakened today, and I can say that it is just bone without the flesh.
Okay,
Ramallah, which is the seat of the Palestinian government, is also subject to the Israeli incursions and attacks.
Okay, please just let's take it slowly so that we understand, Osama. When you say that, I mean, the Palestinian Authority is in charge in the West Bank, but then you sometimes go through checkpoints that are being conducted by the Israelis. What does that mean? What authority does Israel have in conducting checkpoints and security checkpoints in the West Bank, which is under the authority of the government there led by the Palestinian Authority? So that's what I'm trying to understand, that relationship. What has the Palestinian Authority agreed to in as far as some level of cooperation or whatever it is with Israel that allows them to come and conduct those checkpoints in the West Bank?
Yes. Now, the Palestinian Authority was established in 1993 in accordance with Oslo Accord that was signed between the PLO and Israel at the lawn of the White House in the United States. And this accord, Oslo Accord, provides that the Palestinians will have a Palestinian Authority for 5 years. After 5 years, the Palestinian Authority will transform into the state of Palestine. Now, what Israel did, it allowed the Palestinian Authority to have control over the large Palestinian cities, which account for less than 18% of the West Bank, including Gaza, and without any part of East Jerusalem. But the largest area of the West Bank, which is classified as Area C, the area under the Palestinian Authority control, which is 18%, is Area A. We have Area C, which is 63% of the West Bank, which includes all the agricultural areas and the areas where we have natural resources and all the constituents of life. It remained under full Israeli occupation. In addition to Area B, which is a small area under Israeli military and security control and administrative Palestinian control. But when the 5 years ended, and at that time, late Palestinian President Yasser Arafat went to Camp David and held the negotiations with the Israeli Prime Minister at the time, Ehud Barak, and American President Clinton to end the Palestinian Authority and start the state of Palestine. Israel reneged on all that and destroyed Oslo Accord and kept the situation as it is, 18% for the Palestinians and the rest of the land for the Israelis.
Yeah.
Now, the Israeli occupation does not even recognize Area A, which is 18% of the West Bank under the PA, as Israel is practicing all its military actions in this area.
Okay, I've got some questions from our listeners, Osama. So let's start with a question on the WhatsApp line. It says, this is one from Simon who's asking, these checkpoints that you talk about, are they checkpoints to avoid terror attacks? What has been the explanation from the Israelis for how have they justified these constant checkpoints?
Our viewer needs to understand that when we talk about the West Bank and East Jerusalem, we are not talking about the existence of the Palestinian resistance. We are not talking about Gaza. And the aim of these checkpoints is just to embody and materialize the Israeli occupation and to materialize the apartheid Israeli regime in the West Bank, and to restrict the lives of the Palestinians in the West Bank and to force them to leave their homeland. That is the only objective that Israel has behind these checkpoints. We are talking about 900 Israeli checkpoints, of course. We are not talking about a small number of checkpoints, which means that Israel has one policy, ethnic cleansing, to empty the West Bank, to empty all of Palestine of its indigenous people and replace them with the Zionist settlers who kill Palestinians and set fire to Palestinian houses and the properties. And you must have heard of the Palestinian activist and teacher of English, Oda Hadalin, who was killed by an Israeli settler in Hebron in the West Bank just because he tried to prevent the bulldozer from destroying the house of his neighbor.
Okay, and then there's a question about when you talk about the Israeli settlers, what do you actually mean? Are these Israelis that have set up homes in that part of Palestine in the West Bank? Just explain that for us. And then also, if you don't mind, when there are checks that are being conducted, I once did an interview, I think about 2 years or so ago, with someone in the West Bank who said they're not even allowed to walk around with like chocolate. And I don't know if that's still the case and what reason is being given for that. I think there was an explanation that people could use, like they could use something like that, or the packaging or the actual chocolate itself to try and like manufacture a bomb or something like that. Is that really still the case? Is that the reasoning they've used? Are you aware of that? And please, can you respond to the question as well about when you talk about Israeli settlers, what are you referring to?
Yeah. The Israeli settlers are the Israeli civilians who were transferred by the Israeli occupation government from Israel to live in colonial settlements built by the Israeli government on the land belonging to the Palestinian people in violation of the international law and of all the United Nations conventions that regulate the relationship between the occupied and the occupier. So these are called illegitimate and illegal Israeli settlements according to the United Nations and the international law. We are talking about close to 800,000 Israeli settlers who live in the occupied Palestinian territory, taking the strategic areas of the West Bank, mainly the tops of the mountains, in order to look over the Palestinian villages and towns beneath and to have control over all the roads of the West Bank. These settlers are supported by the Israeli Ministry of Finance. They are exempted from paying taxes, they are given homes, they are given jobs, and they enjoy a lot of privileges that the Israeli citizens in Tel Aviv even don't enjoy, just to stay in the occupied Palestinian territories. And they were given hundreds of thousands of handguns and arms in order to restrict the movement of the Palestinian people, attack the Palestinian people. And I can say that every day, these Israeli settlers that we call Israeli terrorist militias attack Palestinian villages, set fire to Palestinian properties, and in certain cases, they kill Palestinians. Just 3 days ago, they stormed the village of Douma near Nablus in the north of the West Bank, and they killed a Palestinian of the Wabshi family whose relatives about 10 years ago were set on fire by an Israeli settler. In that incident, a teacher and his wife and his son were burned to death. These are the Israeli settlers. Concerning the checkpoints, they have control over the bits and details of the Palestinians' life. And they prevent the Palestinians from having access into a lot of commodities under the guise that these commodities might be used for manufacturing weapons or things like that, which of course is not true because the Palestinians don't have any infrastructure in the West Bank for armed resistance or anything of this type. But as I said before, the main aim is to convince the Palestinian citizens that they can't have life in Palestine and they have to leave.
And the thing about the checkpoints and the chocolate and whether or not that's allowed to be carried?
Sometimes, yes, even not the Israeli soldiers, sometimes the Israeli settlers who are supported by the Israeli soldiers stop the vehicles of the Palestinian passengers and they overthrow everything these trucks and these cars have. Sometimes they search the Palestinian citizens, and if, for example, you have some money or any kind of property, they steal it. And when you file a complaint with the Israeli police, for example, they don't respond to you. They don't listen to you.
Okay, got it. So nothing specific then about what has been shared before by this person, and maybe that was their own personal experience. I've got another question here. How is your working relationship? Not even working. How's your relationship with the settlers in the West Bank? Because there are other people who are in homes, right? They're in those homes, and
yes,
you are there. It's your land. How do you then relate with them? Do you get along? And I'm not talking about the security officers here or the people who conduct the searches. I'm just talking about the people that are there, that are in there, who have occupied parts of the West Bank. Do they get along with fellow Palestinians there?
What is very special about the Israeli settlers living in the occupied Palestinian territories is that they're religious and extremist background, as they are affiliated with extremist Israeli rightist parties. They are the disciples of the Israeli Minister of Home Security, Ben Gvir, and the Israeli Minister of Finance, Bezalel Smotrich. So you are talking about the Israelis who have the theocratic and the Torah thinking that the Palestinian people have no right to exist in Palestine, and there is nothing called Palestine. It is all Israel from the river to the sea and even beyond. And you must have heard of the vision of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about the Greater Israel that is going to have all of Palestine, parts of Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Egypt, blah, blah. So these settlers have this ideology, the ideology which negates the other, which does not recognize the right of the other to exist. So it is impossible for the Palestinian people to get along with a group of people who have this fanatic and this extremist ideology that does not respect the right of the other to life. And you hear their statements every day. Just the former Israeli military official, I forgot his name, just 2 days ago stated that there must be a Nakba every some years in order to remind the Palestinian generations that Israel is the power that can crush them, that can destroy them. So this reflects the scope of ideology that these Israelis have. So it's impossible to talk with someone who does not recognize your right to life.
Yeah. Osama Nazzal, journalist in the West Bank, thank you so much for joining us. It's 11:31.